Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm still feeling a little bit under the weather, but slowly my voice is getting better. So today we're going to continue down our planeswalker journey. I have already done both Chandra and Jace. If you haven't seen those, the link is in the icon above or in the description below if you want to go give those a watch. Today I'm going to be drawing Liliana. This is probably one of the hardest ones I've done to date of the planeswalker series, mostly because of the skin tone that I had to achieve, and that gave me a lot of headaches, but overall I think you guys will like the drawing. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So as always, I started with the eyes, and just like the other videos, I put down a small layer of colorless blender and slowly worked in the pink color until I got a gradient that I liked, and I did that until I had both a gradient and highlights that I liked in the eye, and then used color pencil to go around it so that I had a sharp boundary to the eye as well. Just because I know that the skin tone on this drawing is going to be super light, so some of the color pencil is going to be harder to hide, I just use an eraser and erase the lines lightly. Not enough that they disappeared, but enough so that they're not as prevalent when I go to put down color. So for the skin tone, I'm going to start with the gray. I make sure to put the gray down lightly so that it doesn't get too dark, but I also make sure to put enough down so that the layers blend evenly and I have an even gray tone. Then after that, I'm going to put it down a little bit of E50 and blend that into the gray so that it has just a touch of skin color. Even though Liliana's skin is very pale, I want to have multiple colors in there so that you still have some pop on the skin so that it still looks realistic. And then after that skin tone, I'm actually going to put in a little bit of the pink, the same pink that I used in the eyes, as a reflection off her skin from some of the glowing highlights that I'll put in later that come from, I guess you could say, from her face tattoos, are the normal lines that she gets when she's using her powers. So overall, I'm going to keep using that gray, slowly building up the color, and then blend in my skin tone and my pink until I get a realistic color gradient. And then just like the Jace drawing, I'm going to keep working in sections or kind of modules so that I don't let my ink dry out too fast or too quickly so that I can keep blending it. And wherever I need to, I use my colorless blender to try to blend the colors together if I needed a better gradient. So working my way down the face, I want to make sure that there's a big contrast between where the highlights coming in from the left and where the shadows are going to be on the right. And that's even more clear where you can see on the eye where I use a very dark gray to put in some of those very dark shadows where you're going to see where the eyebrow will actually create some shadow on the top side of the eye. And then after I do that, I'm going to take a color pencil, start putting in some of the detail lines, and what I use is a darker purple so that, again, I'm putting in more colors so that you give the skin a more realistic tone. As the more colors you bring in, often the more balanced the face will look overall. I use color pencil to outline the eyelashes, then I go back with the black Copic marker to make sure I have a very dark eyelash because of the way her character is. So one thing that I wanted under where the left eyebrow was going to be was a large highlight because of how the face is structured. So I go back with my colorless blender and keep putting down a layer to diffuse the color and create a highlight. Then I go back with my darker grays to then even up all the colors. So after I had laid down all the Copic color, the skin just didn't look right to me. It didn't have the right paleness that I wanted. So what I ended up doing, and it took a bit more work than I was expecting, was go back with lighter gray color pencils, and I laid down over almost the entire face a layer of grays that I blended together, and it worked pretty much the same exact way. Start with the lightest grays, move into the darker grays as I blended the colors together. After doing that, it gave the face a much better, paler look. And overall, I really like that, and I think it came in as a save because otherwise I don't think it would have looked as good. So specifically for Liliana, I wanted the lips to have a very dark purple look. So I started with a very light maroon and kept adding darker shades until I had a deep purple, and then used color pencils to go back over it to give it all the detail lines that I wanted. But I thought that one matched her character model. It also created a large color difference that complemented the pale skin, and I thought it came out looking very well. For the hair, I know it was going to be black, but I wanted to make sure that I still got some of the highlights in. So I started with some lighter grays, built up some gradients, and then the last thing I did was go over it with the black Copic marker, because the black Copic is a very dark, thick ink, and it mostly covers everything up that it goes over, and that's why I wanted to put the grays down first. Then after all the black Copic marker was down, I went back over with a variety of color pencils to create detail lines and highlights that you would see in normal hair with the way light strikes it. So for the crest that she wears on her head, I wasn't exactly sure what colors I was going to need for it, so I wanted to make sure for the golden colors I started with a very, very light color, because that way, if I did make a mistake, I could cover it up with a darker color afterwards. But thankfully it didn't come out that way, but I used the light colors for highlights and slowly worked in the darker colors to fill out the rest of the crown. But I wanted to make sure that her crown had a realistic metal look, so with the light source that I knew I was drawing, I started with a very light tone midway down where it would catch the most highlight, and then I slowly worked in darker colors going between my lighter and darker Copic markers, slowly blending them together to give an even transition, but make sure that I had a very pure highlight with the way metal looks in light. And then I used a darker color after that to do the same transition to the color that I originally blended in. So what that ended up doing was giving me staged highlights, so it looked like the metal had form and you could actually tell which way it was bending with the highlights. Then after putting the darkest color in, I made sure to go back with color pencil like most other things on this drawing, and I wanted to create what would look like a mottled metal surface so that it would have the look of kind of brushed metal. And so I took color pencils and I just mostly put lines in where I felt like it would look the best. Now with the crown, I did get a lot of bleed, and that was mostly due to how much I had to blend the colors together. You can see it where I put the color pencil to outline the crown, where you have all that hazy bleed outside those lines. Sadly, there's not much I can do about it. Just a warning of how you have to be careful working with Copics and how you have to be careful of the way they blend and spread throughout your artwork. So moving to the cowl that she has on her neck, doing the thin gold lines, I used the same exact techniques I did on the crown before I moved on to putting in the very dark blues that made up the fabric. The dark blues I used were to match the character model because the dark blues are very contrasting to the pale skin the character has to give the face a pop. After the cowl, I move on to her shoulders and chest, where I use the same techniques that I used on the face before I move on to the final part, which is putting the highlights on her face when she's using her powers. So the highlights are very specific lines that follow the curvature of the face. Before I used the Copic marker and possibly screwed up that line, I used a very light pink color pencil to mark out exactly how I wanted the lines to look on her face. And if I made a mistake, it would not have been as big a deal as if I screwed up with the Copic marker, which will be a lot more noticeable. Thankfully, all the lines I drew came out well and I didn't have to worry about that. So after all the lines were drawn, I just went back over it with a very bright pink Copic marker to create all the highlight tattoos on her face. So overall, I really like this drawing. To me personally, I like it a bit more than the Jace drawing I did. I think adding the color pencil on the face gave it a bit more definition while paling out the skin, but it also made it have more detail. And to me, what I was really shooting for in this piece was a lot of realism. So to me, I'm thankful that I'm making progress, being able to put a little more control into my artwork and create a more realistic drawing that I really enjoy. So as always, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like below. If you have anything that you want me to draw in the future, leave it in a comment. And if you want to see more artwork like this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And I will see you in the next video. Now go make something. And that's it.